Hi, I'm Glenn,
And I'm Mark.
and welcome to another episode of Masonic Unity, the Right Stuff, Profiles in Masonic Leadership. We're here in the Museum of Masonic Culture at the Grand Lodge of New Jersey, and especially we're in front of our International Masonic Apron exhibit, which is very important because we are talking to our resident international traveler, Right Worshipful and illustrious Moises Gomez, who is the Grand Historian of the Grand Lodge of New Jersey. Moses, it's wonderful to have you here. We're so glad to have you with us.
Well, Glenn, Mark, my pleasure to be here and looking forward to this wonderful interview here and just sharing some free time with you and the brethren. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for taking your time out of your schedule.
Yeah, we know you're busy in all of your travels, but we wanted to talk a little bit to let our viewers get to know you beyond the social media posts. Who is Moises Gomez? Talk a little bit about your experiences in Masonry, about your travels, and just generally get to know you.
Well, Glenn, I do enjoy the traveling. I think it's very important for the brethren to travel, to get out of that social bubble, that lodge bubble, and realize that Masonry is a global fraternity. The one thing I do get out of traveling around the country, around the world, is that I get to share experiences with other cultures, other brethren, other languages, other creeds and cultures, and that I think is very important. It's an important mindset to open your mind and be able to accept other people, other religions, other faiths, and realize that it's not just one mindset here, because this is the bubble that you've been growing up and living in. And that's very important. That's something that I get to witness. It also helps you as a future leader, because you're realizing what other jurisdictions are doing, how they're doing it, how things worked, how they haven't worked. And those are information you can share amongst ourselves and bring it here to New Jersey and to share it with the brethren as well.
So I would actually like to bring us back a ways and go, how did you get introduced to Freemasonry? What was your reaction, the lodge, your experiences, and kind of like that, and see where Team Badger really got its start?
Well, that's I got started in 2007. I started watching, the National Treasure movies and all that. And I got motivated. I'm always a historian buff. I've always enjoyed history and researching that history. And I started getting involved in the research about why so many famous patriots and revolutionists and important people had a hand, not just because I landed on the moon, I was a Freemason, but really people that really did wonderful things for our nation, our people, our oppressed people. And as I started reading, I said, there had to be something about this fraternal organization beyond the spaghetti dinners and pancake breakfast. There had to be something special.
So we take over the world, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I can find the treasure in the meantime, but...
And that's part of our conspiracy video coming up.
Coming up soon.
But I knew nothing about Freemasonry. I had no family members that were Freemasons that I know of. This was first generation. And there was an individual who works with me at the bridge, George Washington Bridge, and he was a Freemason. He was Prince Hall, and then he went to a clandestine, but at that time I didn't know what all that meant. And he kind of talked me into, involving in what he was actually doing and how he got involved. And many conversations led to me one day Googling some lodges near me in Roselle, and I found three. I found Loyalty, Azure Masada, and Atlas Pythagoras. When I went to Azure Masada, their website was kind of frozen, so they had some issues. But I sent them all email, and the one that responded to me was Atlas Pythagoras, Mohammed Yatim.
Yeah,
he responded to me.
Wow.
I never knew that.
And it's funny because I sent him an email, and he responded within like 29 seconds. And
That sounds like one.
very on point.
Yeah.
And I still have the letter because I really enjoy that talk, how that came about. And it started from there. And I joined AP. It's been a great experience. Great mentors, Thurman Pace, Mel Melendez, yourself and your dad were also members there. So it was a great experience. I love it. And I've always had this fascination with not joining any other lodge except AP. I feel like that should be my mother home.
Mother lodge,
Yeah.
If you want to make me honorary, that's fine. But my home base is Atlas Pythagoras, and that's where I enjoy being. And I've had a great time. And that's how I got into Freemasonry. And I guess getting involved with research and history started when illustrious David Blatley, past Sergeant Grand Commander, was going to redo and reconstruct the Gorgas grave in Jersey City.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that this famous person was in our backyard where I was born, a few miles where I was born. And I went there and I started doing some research and history. And when I called him, we talked for about a half hour, and he said, guess what, you're on the committee. And that was my first big Masonic event ever involved with anything, was getting that Gorgas grave restored and redone.
I was there that day. It was
so
an amazing day.
And that was the first. That was my first taste of that, and I've never looked back. I enjoyed it.
Nice.
People think I'm crazy because I always look up cemeteries. I'm kind of looking at dead people, but I think, one, we shouldn't forget our fellow Masons that have gone before us, but two, they always offer some sort of window of education or history behind them that might have been forgotten. And again, that resurgence of the Scottish Rite, Gorgas, how we saved the craft of masonry here when the Captain Morgan affair came in, and really nobody would have known that.
Yeah.
So it reinvigorated the craft again, reinvigorated the Scottish Rite. And
Very neat.
Now, if I recall right, you've done other cemeteries, and there was another time that you did something regarding a past president?
yes, we did Grover Cleveland. He was not a Mason, but he was the only native-born New Jersey to become president. And he had, in Caldwell, New Jersey, was his birthplace home. And they wanted to do a ceremony, kind of what they did many, many years ago, because they actually got a grant from the government to make it become a small presidential library museum. Not that like the big ones we have today, but the older ones don't have the money, so they're not as elaborate and fancy. But the lady worked with us, and she contacted myself and Alex Aldia from Essex Lodge, and we started talking with her, and I said, I showed her a picture of what George Washington did for the U.S. Capitol. And she said, you guys could do that? I said, yeah, we can do it here. I said, we did it, and we got together, and it took about 7 months of planning. I had to go see the New Jersey Historical Society. I had to visit offices here in Trenton to get permits. We had to go to the county Board of Chosen Freeholders to close the street down because it was a county road. It was a long mess, but it was a great turnout. We had the Civil War representative here, and the town came out. We marched for about half a mile, and we did the ceremony with the wood stanchions holding the actual stone, just like Washington did. And we brought the gavel that Washington used, although we didn't tap it, but it was there in ceremonial use. So unfortunately, the lady who was in charge passed away 2 years ago, but it was a really, really nice event. And it was a public event, and it had nothing to do with Freemasonry, but it brought back a light of what Freemasons did, even if it wasn't a Masonic building. Like we would lay cornerstones for banks and post offices and important buildings, and
That's wonderful.
that's getting the community and Freemasonry involved together.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, you mentioned before about some of your mentors. Can you go into a little bit of what they did for you, getting you started along your Masonic journey?
Well, the biggest mentor, I think, was Right Worshipful Thurman C. Pastry. I think he's been a mentor for hundreds and hundreds of people. Matter of fact, he's turning 98 in 2 weeks. So it's amazing. He's still, he can't get around, but he still has his wits. He still knows things. And Thurman had this thing when you would become an editor apprentice, AP Lodge, we put on refreshment and we congratulate the candidates. And he has this thing about this laugh. He comes up and he hugs you and he gives you a kiss. And we both hit it off at that moment. And we've had this incredible relationship since. And I think that no other person has ever played a more important role in my Masonic career except him. And one of the things that he instructed and would talk many times in his den would be, never ask for anything. Well, he goes, first of all, that's the kiss of death. Don't ask for nothing. Do the work, enjoy it, and things will open up. The other thing, most important thing he told me was travel. He said, don't get caught up in the lodge or the district or the Grand Lodge bubble. There's a whole world out there, and I've had the privilege of experiencing that. I want you to share that same thing. And the first experience was taking me to AMD Week in Washington. When I realized there were brothers from Brazil and Australia and England, that really opened. I said, wow, this is something different. I thought this was just a New Jersey thing, or even though you think Freemasonry is a global event, it's not. You don't really feel it unless you experience
Not as obvious.
And he always said, he goes, Mo, travel, meet people, enjoy the trips, enjoy the fellowship. He goes, that's where you're gonna create. And I think no other advice he gave me worked out as best as traveling. And when we talked a couple of weeks ago, he said, you have actually surpassed me in traveling. I've never thought that you would.
That's saying
something
a lot. That's saying something right there.
Again, I've had other, in the Scottish Rite, I've had the privilege of having two great mentors. I had our Grand Master, Robert Monticelli, when he was Deputy's Rep at the Northern Valley, my Mother Valley. You know, he was Mr. Scottish Rite. I mean, he really was involved in Scottish Rite. And we did many programs, many degrees. Yeah. And the other person I must say definitely, which was right up there with Thurman, was Pastor Sergeant Commander David Glatley. When I came into Masonry in the Scottish Rite, he had just become deputy of the state of New Jersey. And I think that 9-year tenure with him really created and molded us. And Commander Glatley had a special way of knowing who to pick and what job to give you. And that's the true trait of a leader. Right. And I'm not saying that a leader shouldn't work and should sit back, but I think a leader's responsibility is to be able to pick and choose the right person for the right job. And from that phone call that day at Gorgas, at the graveside of Gorgas, when I was leaning on his grave, and he said, guess what? You're on the committee. And then eventually we did the job. And every other event, whether it was the battleship degree or the Tony Pace concert, whatever we did, he always steered us in that direction, never micromanagers, keep me informed, keep me in the loop, but he let you kind of grow and expand on your own. Always with that guidance and leadership over you. But he just gave you that freedom and that confidence that, I'm just going to support you. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, I remember when we did the battleship with Right Worship Paul Ferrer, at one point I was getting a little nervous about 8 months into it. I'm saying, this is a lot of money. It's like $23,000 to get this thing going. And I hope we get enough people. And we talked and he said, don't worry about it. He goes, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We're doing something special. We're thinking out of the box. And that's how we motivate people. And we had 525 people attend that day. So again, that was the kind of mentors that we had. Of course, your dad was another mentor as well. Seeing someone who was in his older age, kind of not involved, when I was around when he was heavily involved, but to see him coming here in this historic building, to see all the work that he always did, especially at the museum at the old Northern Valley, it really is, if a gentleman this with his age, with his frailty and couldn't move around too quickly, can be so invigorated and do it. I said that really inspires the young to get involved. And it really was special to me, even though I know he passed away during in Rochester when I was about to receive my 33rd, which I was really hoping that he would be there. But he was there in spirit. But again, mentorship is very important, I think, because you don't, as a past master or a past whatever, you don't have to be put aside. But you do have to step aside and let the young come in. It's very important to keep the elders active and keep them involved, but it's also important to let the other generation move on. I've always believed that as a Freemason, we are only leasing this fraternity for a short time. It's incumbent upon us to take it and make it that much better and leave it for the next generation. We don't own this. It's not our moment. This is our moment to make it that much better and leave it for the next generation. And that's what we have to do. It's not ours. We don't own it. And mentorship is very important because it guides our young and the next generation to take over the reins. And unfortunately, you see that in many Masonic circles where people just want to hang on. They don't want to let go. You have to let go. And if I may tell you a quick story, there's an old story that I heard from a fictitious story of a brother in one of the states, and he goes around the states doing the Masonic funeral. The only one who can do it, and he does hundreds and hundreds a year. And he doesn't want to train anybody. No, I'll do it, I'll be there. Very passionate. So he winds up in the hospital with a heart attack. And as he's sitting there contemplating, he realizes, if I die tomorrow, who the heck is going to do my Masonic funeral?
Exactly.
I always kept everybody from doing it. I always did it. I didn't want to train nobody. I didn't want to mentor. And then he realized, hey, if I don't mentor the next generation, this wonderful service, that last service we do for our fallen brethren, who's going to do it? So again, it's an allegory, it's a story, it's made up, but it goes to show you that
truer than you think.
It's important for us to step aside and let the next generation and mold them so they can take over and continue that legacy as we see around us. There's hundreds of years of legacy here. If these people didn't share it and give it to the next, open the door for someone else, we wouldn't be sharing this here.
So you mentioned A&D Week. That was like your first big thing. Still busy down there?
Oh, yes. A&B Week, for those who don't know, is the Allied Masonic Degree Week. It's a week that we meet in the Washington, D.C. area for all the smaller independent bodies, Knight Masons and other various groups. And it's a it's been going on for about 85 years, and we meet down there, and that's their annual communication for all these small appendant bodies that meet. And in 2014, I was made chairman of that committee to put it together and run it and organize it, and I'm still there. As a matter of fact, we have meetings tonight to finalize the final plans for this year. But it's a wonderful place. Even if you don't belong to many of the groups, most of the meetings are open. Most of the meals are open to everybody. But it's a good experience. If you get nothing else out of it, you get to meet brethren from all parts of the world, from all different cultures and creeds and colors, and that to me is the greatest gift Freemasonry can offer to anybody.
To truly meet on the level with all these amazing men that you may not have ever bumped
You've
into.
heard about, but you've never
you heard about, you read their books, you read their articles,
Exactly.
and here they are sitting across from you asking you for the pepper.
And that's very important. And in some, unfortunately, in Masonry, we still have a lot of racism and bigotry and a lot of issues like that. But I believe that the more we expose each other globally and around the world and around the country, the better things will get. I believe that, as we grow and expand, imagine a poor, a small rural community, and your grandfather and great-grandfather and your father have all been Masons in that same little lodge, and that's all you know, and they've done it this way. It's tough for that next new generation to break out of that mold when this is all I've seen. So when they get to experience this culture around the world and realize, hey, it does come in all shapes and sizes and colors. Maybe this mindset I've had for hundreds of years shouldn't be that way. Maybe I can break out of it. And I think that's a way of, if you get anything else of traveling, it's being able to share. And just to give you an idea, the Grand Lodge of Tennessee and Prince Hall last year signed an accord to recognize each other. And I spoke at the Lodge of Research, the Tennessee Lodge of Research a few weeks ago. And the brother, the master of the lodge, wanted me to present my Freemasonry in the Underground Railroad in a southern state, a southern slave state. And that goes to show, and they also invited Prince Hall members. So it realized that, to me, that change is coming. It takes small steps, but it will happen. And change is good. And to see a southern state of Tennessee open its doors and recognize all Masons for who they are, and then invite me to do that lecture there.
How was that lecture received?
It was very well received. You always have this tendency to go down there. At one point I said, I wonder if I'm even going to get out of Tennessee alive after I do this lecture. Because I don't want to go there and change people's perception or their life. I'm not going to come down and say, your ancestors did it wrong. That's not for me to say. And I'm not here to judge. But going forward, we need to recognize each other and respect each other. We can disagree with each other. I may not even like you sometimes. But at the end of the day, you have to respect each other for who we are. And that's the beauty of Freemasonry. And it was very well received. It was incredibly well received, and I'm getting more and more offers every day. More in the South, and there's change. I mean, Alabama changed, Florida changed, Tennessee, Georgia changed. And how did Georgia happen? It took Representative John Lewis, Brother Mason, to pass away, and both Grand Masters from both jurisdictions went down to the U.S. Capitol, hand in hand, to pay this brother his last respect. And because of that, at this last session, they agreed to formally recognize. There's some stipulations, but the door was open, and it's being closed.
It just takes a crack.
It takes a small crack. That small gesture of these two Grand Masters and their staff members being there side by side is what broke the ice. So unfortunately, it took the passing of a great man, but then again, they took advantage of that moment and said, listen, let's put our differences aside. It's long overdue. Let's come together.
Good.
And that's the beauty of Freemasonry.
That's part of the social change too.
Absolutely.
When you're doing, you're, as you mentioned, you're not trying to change their mind thought or have them feel bad, but you are saying, look, as a historian, this is what's happened. And in some cases, this is what's happening now. Or in some cases, we've grown beyond that as a fraternity. So that's amazing. And I've sat through several of your presentations that you've done. Could you go over the top 5? Not to present them.
No.
But as a blatant commercial, I guess, for...
Well, my top one is probably my experience with 9/11 and 93 terrorists. My 9/11 remembrance lecture that I do. That is probably the most I've done. I've done it in about 10 countries, 30 states, and I've done it over 350 times.
Wow.
So that's
350 times.
Yeah, that's really the most impressive one that people want, because I just don't tell the tale of what happened at that tragic day, but I try to put a spin on it. Okay, it was 2 horrible days in our American history, but what did we gain from it? What did we learn from it? And the most important part after 9/11 is that we came together as a nation, as a people, one nation under God, without differences, as the greatest generation did in World War II. And we hadn't seen that in a very long time.
Yeah.
It's sad that we now have regressed back and that it takes a catastrophe to bring us closer together. And I always try to say, don't wait for that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
You should stay together now. The other one is definitely the Freemasonry and the Underground Railroad, which deals with the movement of slaves from slavery in the South to freedom in the North of Canada. The other one, which has really grown, I'm really taking a lot of pride in, is Freemasonry and the Civil Rights Movement. In the Underground lecture, it was kind of secrecy. Masonry was behind it, but of course, what you were doing was illegal.
Right.
You know, you couldn't take someone's slave and freedom because that was property, and it was legally allowed to have. In the civil rights, they were more publicly and more boisterous and open because, you know, that was something they were trying to change. And it's amazing how, matter of fact, the other day I just found out that a lodge in Mississippi, which was used for voter registration, had gotten firebombed and was almost destroyed completely. There was a supermarket on the first floor and the Masonic Lodge was the second floor. They owned the building. And because they were offering voter registration during the civil rights era, they firebombed the building. So again, those are the real big ones. And the other one is my talk about Cuba, Freemasonry in Cuba.
Yeah.
It has got a lot of rich history, but unlike our own revolution, which I know many Masons like to say it was a Masonic revolution, which it really wasn't. It was just Masons involved.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they had hand in some of the small stuff, but in Cuba, it was literally Masons and lodges that actually worked and conspired and in tile session to bring freedom, except they did a step further. They wanted their independence, they wanted democracy, but they also wanted to end slavery. So they actually almost completed the American Revolution as to where we took the Civil War to complete that epic saga of that moment. But Cuba was very interesting because it was the only socialist communist country that allowed Freemasonry to flourish, not openly, publicly, but Castro said, you know what, if I don't know it, I'm not going to go after it.
Yeah.
And to this day, they have never broken that chain. They have still meeting, they're getting bigger and stronger as they were. And I often wonder, why would Castro allow it? Stalin didn't, you know, none of these other major, Russia didn't. What was him so different? And knowing the history, Fidel Castro was a smart man. He may have done some wrong things, but he was a smart man. He was a very educated man, and he realized the power of allegories and symbols and figures. And he realized, if I take away their people's heritage, their founding fathers, who were all Masons, what is that going to do? The next thing they're going to do is they're going to come after me, as they've done every other oppressor who's been here for the last 200 years. So maybe if I let them meet, and I keep my ear to the ground, if there's any seeds of discontent, it's going to come out of Masonic Lodge. And if I can jump at it right away and correct it, then maybe they'll leave me alone. And I personally believe that was the real reason. I mean, they say that his second revolution, he was running up in the hills, they were ready to capture and kill him, and a Masonic Lodge gave him safe haven. That's the biggest kind of accepted story, that they gave him safe haven in a Masonic Lodge, him and his brother and some of the other leaders, and that he felt this kinship saying, hey, you know what, you guys helped me when I was about to get my head cut off. Maybe I'll give you guys a break. But I tend to think that he's smarter than that. I think Castro realized how powerful Masonry could be. And if I keep it under control, if I keep it underground, but keep it alive, if there's any issues, it's going to come out of Masonic Lodge. I have my people planted everywhere, and maybe I can hear what's going on and kind of stop that before it becomes widespread and becomes another revolution. And he dies doing it. And again, these stories I do just brings a different light on how Freemasonry actually helped, aided, and assisted other human beings, not Masons as well, mostly non-Masons. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy doing these presentations and these lectures, to show our Masons that, you know, it's more than just meetings and reading minutes and education, but it's really showing you this bond that we have, not just with ourselves, but with society. And that it's incumbent upon us to, when that peace and harmony of a lodge is disturbed, what are we told to do? Whisper friendly counsel in your brother's ear. But again, it's also incumbent upon us, when the peace and harmony of our community is disturbed, that we should also step in and do the right thing. And if you notice here in New Jersey, you're both aware, when the master closes the lodge, there's a small excerpt at the end that he says, do good unto all. Every human being has a good claim upon your kind offerings. Why would the master close the lodge, and his last actual order or his last direction is to take what we do here and take it to the world. Let the world see the beauties. Let the world see how we work. If this is our society, our secret, our closed door, why would the master charge us to do his very last thing, take it to the world? Every human being has a claim on what we do. Because I believe for centuries, Freemasonry has allowed men to meet in fellowship, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of your faith, your culture, your creed, your custom. It has allowed us to meet together, to disagree, to discuss, but at the end of the day, it has allowed us to come together, and I believe that's the backbone of what this craft of Freemasonry around the world does.
I'm hearing a consistent theme of social justice and social change that the Masons have been involved in so many, decades, millennium.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we had social change here in the United States, the revolution. And I don't think it's any coincidence that every major revolutionist from that point on has been Freemason. I mean, there might be some coincidences. I mean, okay, Buzz Aldrin, second man to land on the moon, that might have been a coincidence. He just happened to be picked and was a Mason. It wasn't a Masonic conspiracy to get him to the moon, but I do believe that, although we do have a moon rock here, but I believe that it's something that Freemasonry offers. I guess that fellowship, those core values, I think that those obligations that we take, which by the way, we don't all come in the same way and manner. And I've found that out as my travels. We do it all differently. We all come into this organization, this craft differently. But the one thing is that we all take obligations and oaths that bind us together, regardless of what language, regardless of what custom or culture, and that's what brings us together. So even when I go to Romania and I'm sitting in the lodge and I can't understand a word they're saying, I know, I have this feeling, there's this connection. I know that, I kind of know their next move and the next step, and I have this kinship. Even though I've never met you or understand, there's a connection there.
Right.
And the craft offers that. I mean, Freemasonry is a perfect institution, I believe, made up of imperfect men. Men err, may make a mistake. Medgar Evers, the civil rights leader, was shot by a Mason, Byron D. LeBecq. So, do Masons wrong? Absolutely. Do Masons make mistakes? Absolutely. We're not perfect. The craft is here to give you the implements, it gives you the allegories, it gives you all the tools you need to become that better man, but more importantly, through you becoming better, that you can make the community and your country and your nation that much better.
Part of that individual responsibility that, you're given these tools, much like in the Bible sense, you're given these talents, you need to use them.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Now you talked about your travel experiences. Can you talk a little bit about your travel experiences as a Mason?
Well, there's been quite a few interesting moments. I was attending the Grand Lodge of Scotland session one year. I try to go there quite often, and Scotland is very unique because they're quite old, and Masonry's been there for many, many centuries. But they're very lax on how to do things. So if lodges have been doing their degree a certain way, they have their own regalia, it's fine. You can do it how you want it. You've been doing it for 200 years, we're not going to change you.
Right.
And the way the Grand Lodge session opens, they open on the first, second, and third degree. They open, close, and then they do business. And the third degree, they actually do the final the five step. And when I was about to do what we do here in New Jersey, I just froze because I looked around the room and everybody was doing it. This one looked like he was doing jumping jacks. This one here shot forward and was striking his head. I'm like, what are you doing? I said, where am I? I said, so I froze. I didn't know what to do. I said, well, maybe it was amazing how everybody did it differently.
Yeah.
And when I asked the Grand Master Mason later, I said, I kind of froze. He goes, I saw you from the corner of my eye. You kind of like stood back, and he goes, that's because we all do it differently. We don't do it the same way. And that was my first taste of really realizing that, hey, New Jersey is just one way of doing it. It's not the way, it's not the only way, and that's one of the great experiences I've had. And you can realize how some jurisdictions involve their culture and their religion. It's kind of really intertwined with it, and that's another beauty. Right. In Romania, it's a very Eastern Orthodox Christian nation, and they're really, their Christianity is really involved in that. Their commandery is really to a level I've never seen before. Right. They really take it to another level. When their Grand Commander has the annual session, all the commanderies from all over the country come, and they wear the tunics and the garbs and all the
Wow.
robes.
Yeah.
Their horses are dressed the same way. Their manes are mated. And I couldn't believe, as the regimental band was playing, and the first wave and the first commander was coming through the oldest to the youngest.
Yeah.
They're led by a horse, and the horse was kind of bucking a little bit. And I'm like, well, maybe he's not used to all this noise, or maybe he's getting a little agitated. And what I come to realize is that he was positioning the horse as he went past the Grand Commander. The horse actually bowed before the commander. So he was trying to get the horse in position, and the horse kind of tucked his right leg in, and he actually went and bowed before the commander. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive that they even got the horses having respect.
That's impressive.
So, and again, it's they're very Christian. They actually built a compound, a Masonic compound, and all the attendant bodies meet there.
Really?
And they actually built a Christian Knight Templar church. And all is done by the brethren working together, building it and donating the money. They don't borrow money. They all the money is put together. You donate the money. They built this magnificent, official, blessed, consecrated Eastern Orthodox church. The chairs are unique because you can, when you sit down, the sword comes into the slit.
Oh,
so you can sit, you're not fumbling with the sword.
Yeah.
And they actually have real painted icons. You know, in the Orthodox Christian church, they have icons, and they're all blessed. And you do the HRKTP when you're raised, the order, the final order. It's all done there in that church.
Wow.
So it's very unique to see. You know, here we do it in temples, but you're doing it in a real, what they claim is a real Knight Templar church. That's really beautiful to see that.
Very interesting. Well, we're lucky actually from your travels to Romania to have an apron and a sash
Right behind us.
Brother Anatoly in the back of you. So, where was the most interesting place that you traveled to?
I think the most interesting place is definitely Scotland. I dig Scotland, traveling around Scotland. I've been there about 3 or 4 times now. I've spoken at probably 24 locations. But traveling to all the different locations, the different history, that how old these buildings are, and how old these lodges. Like for them, 200-year-old is young. That's a young lodge. They got lodges 3, 4, almost 500 years old, and that's very unique. But there was one experience. You know, most people know me by my moniker as Team Badger, which I'm wearing here. But I was going to speak at the Grand Lodge of Ireland. Unfortunately, the building suffered a pretty big fire this past week. But while I was there, I was going to visit a lodge in Limerick that has and owns the Bales Bridge Square, the oldest Masonic artifact in the world.
Wow.
There's a whole story to that. But so as I'm waiting for the district deputy to come and have lunch and meet me and my wife are outside and we're looking at the building, and my wife goes, "There's someone across the street looking at you." I said, "Well, he's probably a Mason. He's with his family and probably wants to say hello." And he's going into this castle, which is right across the street. And he goes in, and as I'm putting my hand through the railings, taking pictures, my wife goes, "Oh, he's coming across the street." I'm like, "All right, he wants to say hello. Let him say hello. Maybe he belongs to the lodge. I don't know." And he gets there, and he goes, "Hey, my brother." He goes, "I know you." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, brother." I said, "I've never been to Ireland before. I just got here last night." He goes, "Oh, no, laddie, I'm not from Ireland. I'm from Scottish." And I said, "Oh, I've been to Scotland many times." And he clenches his fist and he goes, "I know you. You're a Team Badger. You spoke to the Master Mason today." And my wife turns around and goes, "I know he just didn't come out of, this man picked you in the middle of Ireland and comes up to you and says you're a Team Badger." And Robert Hay McDonald, that's his name, and we've become incredible friends.
That's wonderful.
When we go to Scotland, we share a lot of fellowship together. And that's the experience that I enjoy. And there's always that, first, that there's no strangers in the craft of masonry, it's just someone you haven't met, another brother you haven't met. And he was a brother who didn't know me, knew me socially, but we've had this incredible bond now. And the guy, we truly have an enjoyable bond. He invites me to stay at his home all the time. He opens up his home and his family. That's the beauty of Freemasonry. And so it took that simple moment, and that's what I enjoy getting out of it, and enjoy exchanging these ideas and these thoughts and these cultures and just these experiences. And if I can bring that back to New Jersey and share it, and maybe others will say, "Hey, you know, let me go to the 18th district. Let me go to Grand Lodge, Pennsylvania. Let me travel and visit and learn and grow." You know, and that's really what I enjoy doing, and what I hope that by me doing it, others will follow as well.
It seems to me it's all about Masonic unity.
Yes.
That no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, we're all one part of a larger puzzle. So,
And that's the important beauty about it. I think by bringing us together in unity, I think that's the greatest accomplishment we can do, and that's the greatest gift that we can have. And just imagine if you can bring all that culture, all that history and heritage to our own lodges here in New Jersey, how much better will we be? And how much, enjoyment we would have knowing we have these fellowship with these other grand jurisdictions. And it also works because brethren here in New Jersey would come up to me and goes, Brother Mo, can you get me a speaker? I want somebody outside. I said, well, yeah, I can find you a speaker. There's a couple lodges I'm working on trips to DC and trips to, to Philadelphia and putting together I just did one for Seacrocus Hudson Lodge. We took a 3-day weekend. Yeah. I'm doing one for Ocean Lodge. And then they'll come up to me and they'll, you know all these people, you know all these places. Can you just put it together for us? And I said, sure, I'll put it together. I said, that's part of who we are. Yeah. And if I can help you, then more. I would love to do it because they're going to get another experience. They're going to see another
that's wonderful
jurisdiction, another Freemasonry that most of them have never seen before. And I think that will make them even grow and expand and open and unite us more. That although this is a big planet, we're really a global fraternity and we're really a small unit. And we should exchange throughout the world. And I think the one thing that came good out of the pandemic was the fact that we have done virtual meetings. During the pandemic, I did 210 virtual meetings. Yeah. And
you were busy.
And the beauty about it, I think that although it's weighing down a little bit, because we all love to meet in person, but I really believe that it's a tool in our toolbox that we can use. Because now, that lodge that doesn't have the money to bring in a well-known speaker from around the world, or maybe South Africa doesn't have the means of getting this brother from New Jersey down here, guess what? You have a virtual meeting, you can bring all of us around the world, and I think in the end, it's not going to go away, and it's going to be an interesting, most important tool in our arsenal to bring us that much closer together from around the world. It's tough when you have to wake up at 5:30 to do an lecture in Australia, and then 2 o'clock for Scotland, and then 7:30 for New Jersey, but again, it's a wonderful tool, and I think that if that's the one good thing that came out of the pandemic was that we can discover ourselves electronically now and share those experiences. Of course, nothing beats being in person, right? But you can share these experiences with brethren from all over the world and all over the culture and realize, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're not the same. We don't speak the same language. We don't look the same. Not the same skin color. But guess what? There's one thing that binds us together, and that's the craft, and that's the beauty of it.
Right. Beautiful. So we've talked about your position on mentoring. We've talked about the Thurman Pace 2 principles of, you can quote me on that one, essentially don't ask for anything and make sure you travel. We've heard you talk about the tools, we've heard you talk about traveling. Where are we going from here? And this is a question that we usually ask most of our interviewees. Yeah, historians. So you've looked in the past and you know that if we repeat the past, it's going to happen again.
Absolutely.
With all these tools and everything else, where do you see our fraternity going?
Well, the one important thing is it's very important to know your past and know your history. If you don't, you're doomed to repeat it. Right. And that's very important. And I think most jurisdictions don't know their past, don't know their history, and they fall in that rut again. But I believe that we're going to be a more global fraternity in the future. And I believe that we're going to be interconnected because of social media, because of the internet and our connections. And I think that's very important because going into the future, we need to learn and experience from each other. And what may not work here may be working in Minnesota, and I can take that experience in Minnesota and bring it to here. So I think the future for us holds that we need to communicate more. Yeah. We need to socially connect with ourselves more. And social media can be a double-edged sword. I mean, unfortunately, it can be used for the wrong reasons and to harm people. But overall, if you use those tools properly, it can expand your horizons. It can expand your experience in the craft of masonry, and could take us to levels where we haven't been before. We can see how other jurisdictions, certain things didn't work out. Maybe we won't fall into that same trap. Maybe we'll go to the right. But we can use their experiences to benefit us, and maybe they can use our experiences to benefit them. Yeah. And we all have a rich history, and that's what we need to share. We need to share our experiences, we need to share our history, and hopefully through unity, we'll be able to change the course of history, but we always have to have that mindset that change is important. You have to change. It may come in small steps, but you have to change. You have to accept and adapt, and I think that's what's going to take us to the future. This world is getting ever smaller, and that could be bad or good, but I think the smaller it gets and the more we can connect, the more we can learn from each other, and the more our leaders can expand. Imagine if we have this wealth of knowledge and research from all over the world at our fingertips to help us in your year, in anybody's year, in anybody's jurisdiction, to be able to help you flow through that year and guide you through that year, and maybe have a wonderful experience, because it's not about yourself, it's about serving the craft. Ultimately, that's the bottom line. But you can take these tools and these experiences to help you better serve the craft and have fun and enjoyment and fellowship, doing the work, doing the ritual. But again, you have that experience, and I think that's where we need to go in the future. We need to evaluate where we are now, where we've come from, what errors and mistakes we made, correct them, and move forward. And using that global tool, that global network, I think is going to be a very powerful weapon in the future and tool to be able to bring us that much closer together, to settle and resolve our differences, and to meet as brethren and love and respect each other, which is the ultimate goal we're here. I mean, that's the bottom line. Titles, honors, that all goes by the wayside. We're here to serve the craft so that there will be a craft in the future. That is our ultimate goal. We have to preserve what we have now. We learn from the past so we can set our history now, so that 100 years from now, they're going to look back and say, wow, look what Glenn and Mark did. This is incredible. And this itself is a tool. Because you can take these little clips, you can spread them out throughout the jurisdiction, share them, and all the brethren you're going to be speaking to, I'm sure, will all have their each unique story and presentation, and that is going to help others lead and grow. One little message can help a lodge or a brother or a master mason leading into his year.
I mean, ideally, what we're looking for is to have the next generations see what you're doing, or what Thurman is doing, or what Mohammed is doing, and build on it, and take it to the next level.
Yeah, we're examples. I learned from, I can tell you now, my traveling, I learned from Thurman. I mean, tell me his experience of visiting Romania and Portugal and France, and I was it. I was captivated. I was hooked. I mean, if I was going to do anything else in life, it was going to be that. And the fact that he was Grand Historian for 3 years, and I'm on my going on my 6th year now. So that really means a lot to me, doing that. But again, if it wasn't for what those conversations we had in his den for many, many years, I would have probably never have been here, because, and that's the sad part, a lot of these people have these wonderful knowledge and experience and they keep it to themselves, or they don't have that opportunity to show it. And what a perfect forum by bringing in brethren from New Jersey, putting it on this type of platform and forum, and sharing it with everybody and the world, and say, listen, there's other options, there's other avenues, there's other roads, all leading to the same thing, bringing us all much closer together in unity.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to share before we call it a day?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much to both of you for what you're doing. I've had a lot of respect for both of you. You've both done a wonderful job in your Masonic careers as well, probably way more than me. But I do enjoy being here, and thank you for the opportunity. And I just, may God bless us all, and may God bless the United States of America, all our veterans, past and present, healthcare worker, and first responders. Because it's by their sacrifice that we meet here today as free men and Freemasons. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for joining us at Masonic Unity. If you want to subscribe to us, press the red button below, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, and take care.
See you later.